All right, let's dive right in. We're heading into the vast, scorching North African desert during World War II, because it's here that one of the most lopsided and, frankly, revolutionary battles of the entire war was fought. Let's figure out how it all went down. So, here's the central mystery we're going to solve today. In late 1940, you've got this small British and Commonwealth force, and they are facing a colossal Italian army. I mean, by any normal logic, they should have been completely annihilated. But they weren't. What happened next was so unbelievable, it would literally change how modern wars are fought. Just take a second to let these numbers sink in. It is an absolutely insane mismatch. The Italians have nearly 5 times the troops, more than double the tanks, and a staggering 10 times the artillery. On paper, this isn't even a fight. It's supposed to be a slaughter. The British were staring down an avalanche. So what happened when this tiny force decided to launch a counterattack, codenamed Operation Compass? Well, they didn't just win. No, they pulled off one of the most decisive and complete victories of the entire war. And they did it with absolutely breathtaking speed. I mean, what was originally planned as just a 5-day raid exploded into a 2-month blitzkrieg. The British and their allies didn't just push the Italians back, they completely shattered them, capturing fortress after fortress in this relentless, unstoppable advance. The human cost for the Italians was just immense. In only 10 weeks, this little force of 36,000 men took 138,000 prisoners. Think about that. They captured almost 4 times their own number. That's a statistic that just screams total collapse of the Italian 10th Army. And it wasn't just the men. The material losses were just as devastating. Over 400 tanks, gone, either captured or destroyed. This wasn't just a simple defeat. This was the complete annihilation of an army's armored strength. And they did all of this over an incredible distance. The Western Desert Force pushed over 800 miles, deep into Libya, chasing the Italians so relentlessly that, in the end, there was just nowhere left for them to run. The British commander, General Richard O'Connor, he summed up the final battle with this simple, kind of poetic message. The hunt was over. But honestly, it just makes the mystery even deeper. How on earth did they do it? Well, the answer wasn't some new super tank or a secret weapon. It was an idea, a whole new way of fighting that was actually born from the ashes of one of Britain's most humiliating defeats just a few months earlier. You see, back in the Battle of France in 1940, it had been a complete catastrophe. The British Army and the Royal Air Force were fighting as 2 totally separate organizations. Their headquarters were miles apart. A simple request for air support could take over 3 hours to get through, which is an absolute eternity in a battle. The result was a disaster. So in the desert, they learned from that. They put their headquarters right next to each other and opened up direct lines of communication. And this game-changing concept was called air-land integration. The idea was to break down the walls between the Army and the Air Force and turn them into one single, unified killing machine. A pilot in the sky and a tank commander on the ground were now fighting the exact same battle at the exact same time. But, an idea like that is easy to say, but it is incredibly hard to pull off. It meant overcoming decades of rivalry, of prejudice, and just completely different ideas about how you're supposed to fight a war. In fact, their first few stabs at this new doctrine were spectacular failures. Operations with names like Brevity and Battle Axe saw all the old problems pop right back up. The Army and the RAF were pointing fingers at each other. Communications fell apart, and commanders were literally arguing over what airplanes were even for in a land battle. The big breakthrough really came down to people. Air Marshal Arthur Tedder and Air Vice Marshal Mary Conyngham were absolutely determined to make this work. They found partners in the Army, and together they made the radical decision to set up joint Army RAF headquarters, a move that Conyngham later said was of fundamental importance to winning the whole war. And this is the beautiful system they built. It was a communications network that was all about one thing: speed. So a soldier on the front line could radio for help. That request went straight to a joint command post where an Army officer and an Air Force officer were sitting side by side. They could scramble planes from the nearest airstrip, and get this, the same soldier who made the call could then guide the pilot right onto the target. The response time was slashed from hours to minutes. So through all this painful trial and error, they forged a whole new doctrine for war. And you can really boil it down to 5 core principles. And these principles would become the blueprint for Allied victory, not just in Africa, but all across Europe. Okay, so first, and this is the big one, control the sky. Air superiority is the absolute foundation. Second, you have to foster a genuine willingness to cooperate. Third, you have to plan together in joint headquarters. Fourth, make sure you have fast, reliable communications. And finally, you build all of this on a shared doctrine that everybody understands and, crucially, believes in. And I really can't overstate this. That first rule was the absolute key. Without control of the air, your guys on the ground can't move freely, and you can't get that air support to them when they need it. By focusing on destroying the enemy's air force first, the RAF created the conditions that made all those stunning victories on the ground possible. Now this system, forged in the heat of the desert, it really reached its absolute peak with the arrival of General Bernard Montgomery. He'd seen the failures in France firsthand, so he was a true believer. He just got it. He knew that combining the Army's power on land with the Air Force's power in the sky would create a force that was basically unstoppable. And that leaves us with this final thought from Montgomery himself. The ultimate lesson from the desert wasn't just about cooperation. It was about becoming so integrated that the very idea of two separate services just disappeared. They had become one. And that makes you wonder, doesn't it? In an age of ever more complex warfare, is that a lesson we still remember today?